Hello, it's Paddy in the studio.
Hello, it's Victoria in the studio.
And we're awaiting Faisal Islam.
We are. It's late.
Well,
And you've got a train to catch soon.
I have got a train to catch, but we won't hold that against Faisal. So there's a lot of news. You've made news on your programme. I've had the Health Secretary as well. But let's begin with the news from Glasgow.
Yes, you had a briefing from the BBC Charlotte Gallagher, who's covering it. There's lots of controversy, isn't there? And government ministers are getting involved in it.
Yes, well, we were expecting the controversy to come from Kneecap, the Belfast rap trio. But in fact, what happened was it was the preceding act, Bob Villan, who called for killing the IDF, basically, the death, the IDF.
And actually, it was because of the chanting about death to IDF soldiers, that has prompted the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, to speak to the BBC's Director General, Tim Davie, because obviously the BBC were broadcasting it live.
Yeah, on the iPlayer.
iPlayer.
So when you had the Cabinet Minister, Wes Streeting, on, did you try and get a reaction from him on this?
Yes, we asked him, what did he think? And also reaction to the fact that the Israeli embassy has suggested this is potentially glorification of violence. Here's what he said. I want to ask you about Glastonbury and Bob Villan and Kneecap. Police in Somerset say they are looking at comments made on stage by both bands. The government has strongly condemned chants from Bob Villan, who called for death to the Israeli military during their performance, which was broadcast live on the BBC. What did you make of that?
Well, firstly, we're probably giving him what he wants, which was publicity. Secondly, I thought the comments were revolting. And if I think about the war in Ukraine, no doubt I want Ukraine to win, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be cheering on the deaths of Russians. I don't think anyone wins from that. And here's the other thing I'd say. We're talking about what happened on stage. Why don't we talk about, it's not criticism of your questions, by the way, but what's happened in the Middle East this week?
Yeah.
A Palestinian village in the West Bank set on fire in Taipei. I met with the Red Cross and Red Crescent this week about the humanitarian catastrophe that we have today, the risk of disease spreading over the summer and famine in the autumn. And the irony of that music festival is that Israelis were taken from a music festival, killed, raped, and in some cases are still being held captive. Whether you are Israeli or Palestinian, whether you are Christian, Jewish or Muslim, all life is precious. And we're not going to solve one of the most intractable conflicts on earth with those sorts of stunts.
So, as I was trying to explain earlier, there's what happened on the stage to the people who saw it. Then there's, did the BBC knowingly or unknowingly broadcast it? That's sort of why we're talking about this in the way we are, because a BBC spokesperson has reacted. Some of the comments made during Bob Villan's set were deeply offensive. During this live stream on iPlayer, which reflected what was happening on stage, a warning was issued on screen about the very strong and discriminatory language. We have no plans to make the performance available on demand.
Well, Glastonbury have just posted a statement on their Instagram. With almost 4,000 performances at Glastonbury 2025, there will inevitably be artists and speakers appearing on our stages whose views we do not share. And a performance presence here should never be seen as a tacit endorsement of their opinions and beliefs. However, we are appalled by the statements made from the West Holt stage by Bob Villan yesterday. Their chants very much crossed a line, and we are urgently reminding everyone involved in the production of the festival that there is no place at Glastonbury for anti-Semitism, hate speech or incitement to violence.
What we're getting used to is the world where everything that happens at Glastonbury from the year of Jeremy Corbyn and on becomes this sort of playing into what's political and what's music.
Yes.
And the people who organise Glastonbury say everyone's welcome, we're not going to ban views. The BBC broadcasts it, there's a line there about what can be broadcast, etc., etc. But ultimately, when you look back, we used to think of it mostly for the music, but every time it's on, and it won't be on next year, we now expect some sort of statement from the stage. And I think what you could probably say, actually, is if you look at all live events carried on all broadcasters, you wait for this kind of moment when an artist makes an impromptu speech.
Yes.
And you ask, well, what did you do as a broadcaster? What did you know?
Yes. It's like the Brits,
Yeah.
It's live. Artists are collecting awards. They want to use that moment. There's always a controversy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people I meet in my home life think there's a delay.
Yes.
Obviously we're recorded now, so if I make a mistake, the editor will cut it out, and frequently has to, of course. But when you and I are live, you on Newsnight, there is no gap. So people,
There's no delay.
There's no delay.
No.
And let's just stop the reporting of that to say that actually in Glastonbury on the stage.
Here's Faisal.
Here's Faisal Islam, late.
How are you?
You've come at the time when I was trying to be jolly, actually, so it's good that you've come.
good.
Yes.
Just to say that Rod Stewart's going on the stage at Glastonbury later today.
Yes.
Yeah, and do you want to use your microphone, Faisal?
Yes, why not?
We have 3 Newsnight presenters in a room.
There we go.
2 good ones.
What do
Newscast night.
what do you call 3 Newsnight presenters in a room together?
A gaggle.
An ego.
A scoop?
Faisal, tell us the last band you saw on a stage.
Oh, it was Public Enemy on Friday night.
Okay.
At the Royal Albert Hall, which is kind of an interesting
That's
combo. Fascinating. Loads of oldies like me. And then a new set of young people who obviously now see Public Enemy has been like the authentic hip-hop rap band.
Right.
And knew every single word to every single rap.
Yeah.
But, like, obviously old school, controversial. At the time, not that controversial now. But, these arguments and debates that they have a long history.
Yes. Yeah.
They do. Also, on PM on Friday, which I was hosting as a stand-in, we made the link that if you go back to 1977, which older newscasters can, that was the year of the Queen's Silver Jubilee.
It was.
And it was when the Sex Pistols brought out God Save the Queen, which had the lyric of fascist regime. The song was banned by the BBC. The Sex Pistols performed it on the Thames on a barge, and when it came into dock, there were arrests made. So there was, I think what you were telling me is that arguments about what artists do when they meet politics have been going on for the entire lifetime of all of our older newscasters.
Indeed, yes. And will go on forever too. And I mean, it was Wes Streeting on your show that said we're giving these guys what they want in terms of publicity, although, not that surprising given what was said.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's the briefing on the Glastonbury story. You've mentioned Wes, because really why we wanted you to be here, because we've got the business of where the government's money's going now that it can't make the cuts it wanted to welfare. So where do we start? Do we start with you and asking about tax going up, or do we start with the political horror for the government?
It's all kind of blended into one, isn't it, really? I mean, I think where we're heading right now, if nothing changed, and there's still some moving parts here before the budget in the autumn, is I think people are expecting a significant tax rise at the budget to fund not just the U-turns, but also the fact that the forecasts are again off beam. And of course, there's a certain circularity to this because, as again was said on your show, Victoria, the origin story of this whole, I think we can call it debacle, is a kind of fast forwarding. Perhaps before they were fully prepared, there were these welfare reforms in order to get cuts up front, in order to sort of heal the wound that had opened up in the public finances in the first place. So you sort of get a sense of a kind of hamster wheel of trying to close these over. And then, I mean, there's many things to say, but where this junction between the economics and the politics here is about, can you really run things like this? And in order to get, if you like, the mathematical budget credibility of always getting your budget maths every 6 months, you then do a set of policies that can't get through Parliament and is the sort of abacus of credibility you lose on the political side, don't you?
Yeah.
Because
are you saying you can't please the markets and please the Parliamentary Labour Party?
Well, I think you probably could,
right,
but not like this.
Not like this.
Not like this.
Fine. Okay. So is the strategy of we'll look at winter fuel, we'll look at welfare, we'll look at farmers' inheritance tax. So picking off those areas to try and make things balance. They can't. They're going to run out of options, aren't they?
Well, you make a very good point there. I mean, what have they run out of here? They've run out of big clubs to deal with fiscal policy problems. So that's balancing off tax and spending, because they ruled them out themselves a year ago.
So is she going to?
No, you go. I'm interested. I was interrupting you.
Is Rachel Reeves, is Keir Starmer, are they going to break their manifesto promise on the income tax rise or the VAT rise then?
I have to say, I was always surprised that at the budget last year, they didn't go for just extending the thresholds. That is a big ticket income tax rise.
Extending the freezing of the income threshold.
Yes,
Got
yes.
you.
Now, I expressly asked then Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves a year ago about this, and she didn't rule it out.
Right.
We have that on tape. Now, of course, there's a very decent argument to be had about whether it breaks the spirit of whether income tax has gone up or not. You don't change the rate, you change the threshold.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but it's not, let's just say, well, obviously the previous government did it multiple times. So they're on shaky ground and attacking it. For some reason, we, the public, notice this sort of tax rise less. It's a sort of obvious place to go. She made something of a flourish of not going there at the end of the last budget in October. And instead they did national insurance, which got them into all sorts of other trouble with small businesses, particularly in retail and in hospitality. And then you have this sort of desperate look in every nook and cranny for like little tax revenues here and there that's causing them setting off unexploded ordnance all over the place.
Because I was only interrupting when you said they ruled it out expressly themselves. I was going to say, in a way, the Conservatives ruled it out for them. The Conservatives privately have said although their campaign was a calamity, they were covered in cake and catastrophe and given an awful drubbing by the voters historically. They did manage to spook the opposition, Labour, as what then was, to say, oh, no, we won't raise income tax, we won't raise VAT, we won't raise national insurance, public-facing national insurance has now been modified to. But actually, I want to predict they will have to raise income tax, Faisal. I just can't see, as someone who has an A-level in maths, that's all I've got, I can't see how this gap in public finances can be addressed without pulling one of the big levers.
Yes, I agree, and which is why you go for the thresholds, which does get you quite...
Not a penny on income tax.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd go for the thresholds,
I'm going further. I'm saying that
you're going
by the end of the Parliament, they'll have to put up income tax.
Right.
Okay, so there's a really important thing which kind of ties together beautifully the economics and the politics, which is that what you're seeing, politics seems to be very much about what you don't do, what you can't do, ruling things out. And I think maybe, if I was to distill it very simply, maybe the public are after, what are you actually going to do? And I think that the really quite surprising thing, to bring it back to the conversations that you were having this morning, was they had 4 years, 5 years, whatever it's going to be, massive majority. There's obviously a great need for welfare reform of some kind. Something's gone badly wrong in terms of mental health, young people. It isn't. I mean, Crisis doesn't get it. It's a total horror story that young people are going straight from school or university into mental health payments of some description, not making that first connection with the jobs market, which could have a lifetime of consequences for them and for the economy. So reform needed. You would have thought this is the best possible situation for any government of any stripe, with a massive majority in 4 years to do it, and yet instead they went for cuts. They brought it forward. And I think that is why, and to bring it to the politics, I think that is why it wasn't just a revolt of the left of the Labour Party. You got people like Meg Hillier. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I fell off my chair when I saw her at the top of that amendment. The Treasury Select Committee chair, former minister, understands what is reform and what is a cut inherently. And that is obviously, it's the fact that it was so widespread that was the problem. But the core of that is that they kept on telling people, and they say things, this is reform, we want to reform. Everybody knew that it was first and foremost a £5 billion cut.
So let's get to the summary of the Sunday journalism. Here is what Wes Streeting said. He was on Radio 4 and BBC One, and here's a little portion of what he was saying representing the government.
Critically, I think one of the things that's changed this week is not just the package, but also the approach. We're in a much better position now than we were this time last week for a number of reasons, partly because anyone who's watching this morning who's on PIP now has the security of knowing that their position's protected. But crucially, in terms of PIP reform, there's a commitment there to work with disabled people, with disability rights organisations. The irony about the size of the signatories to the amendment is that on the principles of the bill and a number of elements of the bill before it was changed, there's overwhelming consensus. People want to see the welfare system sustainable. They want the support for people who genuinely can't work through no fault of their own to be more generous. They want more support to get people back into work. But on the substance of the bill, people had such concerns that they signed an amendment in the way that they did. And there's been, I think, a really good engagement this week between ministers and backbenchers that have led us to a far, far better position.
So he's using the phrase good engagement. It's sort of independent onlookers are saying catastrophic climb down in the face of defeat. But do we know what will happen to Rebels on Tuesday from the Labour side? Will there be another amendment? Will Meg Hillier withdraw hers? And where can money come from that's no longer coming from making stricter PIP guidelines?
So we heard from Lou Haig, didn't we, on Victoria's show this morning, that subject to detail, she was now going to back the bill.
Yes.
The reasoned amendment, we weren't ever sure that was going to be called anyway. If Meg Hillier pulls it, I don't know what the how that gets called. There's some sort of interaction with the Speaker and with the opposition too. It seems to have the momentum to get through at this stage. They can always have another nibble at a later stage in the Commons. How do they get the money? Well, it goes into a pot of other U-turns, and the forecast change misses that, I said. And if nothing else changes, then they'd have to raise taxes, as we discussed before. Now, there is still some time for the economy maybe to surprise us on the upside, which is not totally out of the question, but not where people expect things to go. But yeah, as I said before, how you would fund it eventually is by having to raise tax. But I'm very interested in this strange phrase, co-production.
Why?
Well, it's going to be a co-production with disability charities. Now, if the fundamental aim is to reduce the bill, that doesn't seem to me like a very happy production.
Yes.
I mean, and then one has to step back and say there are some serious questions here that people are tiptoeing around, and I pose them as questions. I suppose even the posing of them as questions is controversial, but the run up in the disability support system was built out of physical disability. Then we had this thing, parity of mental health and physical disability, that came into the politics about 10 years ago under the coalition. Now, the physical disability system was essentially designed to help people live lives with equipment. And in this country, we chose to give cash. In other countries, they chose to pay for equipment.
Yes.
How does that apply to a world where the big growth in disability is in mental health? Should we expect the same sort of cash sums or equipment funding to be required? Is there an argument to say, actually, with mental health, particularly with young people, it's in-kind support, it's therapies that would work? Now, disability charities get very upset about this. They say it's undignified. People want the dignity and the agency of being able to spend their own money. But if they're fundamental, if the fundamental cause of the growth, and it isn't just this, but one of the is mental health, young people, and fundamentally, the government wants to get that bill down. Some extremely tough conversations need to be had with the public. The other way to deal with this is say we accept that it's parity, we accept that society is going to pay for it, and then taxes will have to go up.
Yeah.
Those are two conversations that we're not having, right?
Yeah, there are trade-offs, which every time you interview a government minister, you'd think there were no trade-offs, but there are with every choice.
And the public in polls, they would prefer us to be working than claiming welfare. But there's the baseline for welfare is we do want support, we do want a welfare state. But what's happened to this bill is it's risen to the size of the defence budget. Inevitably, what you're saying to me is, dear members of the public, is that okay? Or must we flatten the curve? And flattening the curve means people and maybe you, dear voter, are not going to be eligible for the support that other people have been told to expect. That conversation is one that spooks Labour MPs because they want to be a party that is proud of the welfare state, what was created after the war. They're proud of it. The Conservatives also, for many years, put a rise on health spending themselves. So the public do see a rising bill, and they now see rising eligibility. And your question is, why? How do we talk to the public about rising eligibility when it's got to be paid for? And this has all come together in a chaotic moment, really, hasn't it? Because of the one bill going to Parliament.
But I come back to, we had a number of short-term tactical decisions made by what is now the government before they came to the election, that they are, I think Ed Balls said at the time, and others, you're really hemming yourself in. You've no idea what's around the corner. I mean, just Donald Trump and tariffs, plus the continuation, plus obviously the defense. We've talked about how much defense spending has to go up.
But imagine, just take us back to that election campaign this time a year ago. Yeah. Imagine if they hadn't ruled out a rise in VAT, a rise in income. Then what would we have been saying? We'd have been asking day after day. So you're going to raise income tax then, aren't you?
This is true, but it was pretty clear that the vow of the previous government, not to the similar vow, didn't stop them raising income tax through the back door.
Yeah, Boris Johnson did. Yeah,
I think right. I remember doing a pieces for the 6 and 10 o'clock news saying that all of these vows are totally pointless. Yeah. And if the situation changes, maybe the public's ready for sort of slightly more intelligent conversations about where things might have to go. It's just you get the impression that even with a nominally powerful government with a massive majority, you would think that they were able to grip things and have long-term conversations with the public that levelled with them. You would think.
And just to add, when they won the election and they were doing the gloomy rose garden, things are going to get worse before they get better, and look at this inheritance and it's worse than we thought, and look, there's a black hole apparently of 22 billion. They could have used that narrative to, extend the income tax thresholds, or put a penny on the income tax, or whatever it is. The done and won. Yeah, the one and done. Sorry,
the
one and done policy.
They might well have been able to do that. I mean, they've had a bunch of strategies come out this week as well, which, I just they're running out of time, really.
Are they?
To make tough. Well, okay. Here's what the markets might think now,
right?
Which is, in this attempt to reach this sort of narrow mathematical abacus-based credibility of these rules. And by the way, there's a real question about why you do this every 6 months. Why don't you do it once a year? The IMF itself has suggested just do it once a year. Don't do it every 6 months. You can see the logic in that. But in trying to do this because you want to be seen as sturdy and stable, if you end up having to do policies that are politically unsustainable, which is clearly what has happened, just how credible is the whole package? And then in turn, how credible is it that they might need, in the tough decisions that they have to co-produce with the disability charities now, can they go there? Yeah. Can they go back there now, having done this, having not, got all their ducks in a row? And of course, we should mention the fact that, and this is all predicated on the fact that one bit of what is termed to be the welfare budget, which is state pensions, is totally protected and given a triple lock. And when it's going to be reformed, people say it's going to be a quadruple lock, not any less. And that takes up way more extra cash from the public coffers than, for example, the cut to winter fuel allowance that's been reversed.
Fuel duty.
Yeah, all of this is on. All of this is possible. Yeah, I'd say it could be. The sort of gap that the forecasters say, if nothing changed, we are heading for. So this is like nothing changed, we head straight for, is 10 to 15 billion that would have to be closed in order to meet the rules, and that's before any significant change to defence spending. We haven't even got into, for example, when the defence budget has been put up to the current level, it was through aid cuts.
Yes.
There's a whole load of pretty controversial decisions that will start to materialise and become very, very visible, with a different quarter of perhaps core Labour voters that hasn't been talked about hugely so far.
So the Wes Streeting was on the round. We've given you our best briefing of what he said about. And there's the Glastonbury Stramash, which we dealt with.
Yeah. Axon today, Niall Rogers, seen him. Yeah. Rod Stewart, haven't seen him. Olivia Rodrigo, no. Libertines, have you seen the Libertines?
I've never seen them live. No. Snow Patrol.
Snow Patrol, yep, seen them.
And
what's this?
They'll probably be...
Base layers B2B Born on Road.
That's not going to make you sound very down, is it?
How'd you say it?
You're going to pronounce the Z on the end of base layers properly. It's base layers...
you probably know that this is not Victorian.
Nile Rodgers and Chic, though.
Yes.
I mean, they're
Legendary.
cross-generational.
Yeah.
They play a bit of Daft Punk there as well. And
Yeah, they do.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
This is the bit where we sound terribly old.
I don't care.
No.
I'm 56.
Yeah.
I love my life. It's great. I'm happy to be.
Fine.
Yeah.
Time
to go.
But I tell you what, leave me one thing. It was the oldies that still dance. I don't know if the youngsters are into dancing at gigs as much.
So when you
They're
were at the
a bit
Royal
too-
Albert Hall,
Yeah.
there was a lot of dance.
It was embarrassing dad rap dancing. Yeah.
Right.
Not by me.
Okay, that's enough.
Okay, so
Cringe. My kids would be saying at this point, this is cringe.
it's don't say that on our Sunday podcast. It's honest. So we say thank you very much for listening and goodbye.
Bye.